Today I want to talk to you about something that we do as a family each and every night. Now, we sit down and we do our devotions and our prayer time, but we also do something that we call Happy Thoughts, and that's where each person in the family in the house will say something that made us happy that day. If we have our niece and nephew, they do the same thing with us, and they know the routine with us. But it's something that we find fun, and it's enjoyable, but it also teaches the kids an important lesson, that even though some days that's going to be a hard thing to do, it's going to be hard to find those good things. And right now as kids, and we homeschool, so the pandemic and everything has not affected our schooling a whole lot, other than we can't go do our field trips that we usually do. But kids are starting a really weird and really stressful school year right now. All around the world, kids are having to go to school with a lot of different rules and a lot of different regulations and masks and everything else that's going to scare them and going to concern them and going to make school not a lot of fun sometimes. And I hate that for them. My heart aches for them. But today I talk about happy thoughts because I think that even in these hard times, it's important that our kids and those around us see us looking and thinking on the good things. We did this as a child when I was a kid growing up, and I can remember doing it most every night. I couldn't tell you honestly if we did it every night, but I can tell you the thing that made the biggest impact is those days that we knew it was a bad day, and our parents would sit there and they would kind of help us and coax us and help us to find the good in that day, even when they knew it was a bad day for us or a bad day for them. And I want to be that example for my kids. I want them to see joy in the terrible. I want them to see happiness even when the day seems like it's failing. I want them to see the good in life even when life isn't working right. I want them to see those things, but I don't want them to see them of me. I want them to see them of God. I want them to see that God can give us that joy. God can bring us the happiness. In Him alone can we find that unending, everlasting joy. And only through Him are we going to be able to find the joy in some days, because some days really are going to be horrible. Whether it's because you lose a loved one, or someone has hurt you, or betrayed you, someone has lied to you, someone has physically harmed you, there's going to be some days that are really, really bad. And it's important that our kids and those around us find the good in us, even through those hard times. Philippians chapter 4, verse number 8 says, "Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue and if there be any praise, think on these things." Here in Philippians, we see Paul talking to the Christians at Philippi. And he's talking to them and he's telling them different ways to be able to walk in a Christian way. And I think that we can use this now today to remind us that he does want us to think on these things. Now, some days we do need to reflect on the bad. We need to reflect on the things that have happened, because everything we go through is going to change us one way or another. Whether we go through something bad or horrible, or we go through something completely amazing, our lives are going to be changed. I can go through something today that will make me a completely different person tomorrow. But those things that we go through and those things that change us, they change us not because of the things that happen to us, but because of how we react to them, how we think on them. Now, we can think of things and we can think of a situation that happens to us and we can think of it in a true and pure way. And we can know in the honest nature of everything that it was not a good situation, but we can't control it. If somebody hurts us, we can't always control what other people and other things are going to happen and do, but we can control how we react to them, and we can control how we think on them. We can think of them and we can use them to grow. We can think on them and we can use them to find joy, because without the bad, there is no good. And I know that we've all heard those situations and that kind of saying where you can't have good if you didn't have bad. You can't have the good days if you don't have bad days. You aren't going to know the difference between the good and the bad if you don't understand that there is sometimes bad. And when we have our families and our friends, and for me, especially my children, seeing me go through those days that I do have to admit, you know what, it was a bad day. Some things happened that were not good situations, but I want them to see me coming out of it with faith in God and with prayer and with joy that only God can give me. And when we sit down and we do those happy thoughts, and they know that they've maybe seen me crying that day, they've seen me hurting, but I want them to see me think on something good. So we can think on all of those things, and we do have to think on the bad things too sometimes, because we have to let them mold us into who God wants us to be, because He does allow things in our lives, and sometimes those bad things are something that we caused, something that we did through our sin and through other things, and those things all can help us to grow. We have to learn from them, and we have to grow. And so that's why we have to think on the bad things sometimes, because we have to grow from them. We don't dwell on them. We don't think on them in a positive nature. You don't think on your sin as in a thing that you miss or you want to have back, but you think on those things in what God has done for you, where He's brought you from, what He can do for you in the future. Now, I want to encourage you, if you don't do something like this with your kids, it is a wonderful routine to be in, but it's also good for them just to see on a daily basis you finding the good and the bad. The Bible here tells us to think on all of these things, to think on good things, and I think that that is something that everybody needs to see in us, especially now. As Christians, the world needs to be able to see us stand as a group and as a whole, and to be able to think on the good things, because right now the world is going through things that we never could have imagined, really, and they need to be able to look at us as the ones finding the joy and the peace in the world. God has given us that, and He expects us to show others. So think on the good things and have happy thoughts. God bless.